Hey, all, it's Horse Thief. Welcome to Cover, where we create new storybook brawl stories with you. Yuckmouth and I will be your host today, and as you know, Good Luck Games loves giving back, so as usual, we will continue featuring an excellent batch of charities. Yuck, how about you tell us what we're up to today?
Today we have a special guest. It's Raschy. If you spend any amount of time on Twitch in the Storybook Brawl community, you certainly recognize the name Raschy, somebody who's been very involved in the community. So involved that they've even gone from player to being on the development team. And that's something that we all, I think, find very interesting and want to know more about. So this is our chance not only to get to see Raschy for the first time and that mustache that makes my mustache a little bit jealous.
That's a nice mustache.
But we get to ask some questions and find out about the journey, how it happened, what it was like. Thanks for joining us, Raschy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It should be fun.
Raschy, kind of want to start this off getting to know a little bit more about you. You told me that you started playing games before you could even read. What was that about?
Yeah, so, oh geez. I don't know if you guys remember this, but like in the late 90s, there was like a commercial for Pokemon where they like crammed a whole bunch of Pokemon onto a bus. And as a kid, I was like fascinated by that. I was like, I want this game, right? I was like only like 3 years old or whatever. And like I asked my dad to get me the game, and they got me like, purple Game Boy Color, Pokemon Yellow, and I couldn't read, but I had to have him sit there next to me and explain things to me. And at some point, I just kind of like, don't know what this word is, but like I can recognize the symbols in a way that's like, yes, this is a good move. Just hit the buttons and just keep going with it. So, yeah,
Man, I love
that's how I got into gaming.
And then I think you had mentioned that you were always a Nintendo household, at least at the start. And I love these things because I got into gaming when I was a kid. We had a NES, and I've shared the story before, but my aunt at the time, when I was very young, worked at, rental stores, kind of like Blockbusters, or used to be, we had Hollywood Videos around. People probably more familiar with Blockbusters. But because she had that job, she would get these big boxes of beat up cartridges that were no longer suitable for rental, and come Christmas time I would just get a box of NES carts, and they may or may not work, but I had all these games to play. So I love these stories.
Yeah, I mean, this is nostalgic for me. You said, do you remember? And then started talking about the early 90s. Come on, Raschy. Let's go further back than that, because I started on an Atari 2600. That's back in the Pong days. Legitimately grew up playing Pong, and, Miss Pac-Man, was like the hot at the time. Also spent a lot of time myself in arcades. That. Can I please have one more dollar from my parents so I can spend these 4 quarters on playing these 4 arcade games. So that's my experience. But I love hearing you talk about how you didn't know how to read, and you had to have help. And well, as a parent, that feels like such a great bonding opportunity. And you probably were like gaining a lot from that you didn't even realize, and maybe still don't realize. So yeah, I really appreciate where that takes me in a thought process type.
Yeah, I think it's super cool too. The other thing you remind me of, before I would go to school, my dad is like super early bird. Before I go to school every morning, he'd get me up early. I think it was a strategy in retrospect to make sure that I was awake and compliant. But he'd get me up early, and we'd play a couple of rounds of Nintendo. We'd play some Double Dragon before we went off. So you playing Pokemon with your dad hits me right at home. It also gets me kind of curious, like what other games were foundational or formational for you?
I was really fond of like platformers on the SNES and the N64. Those are like my core consoles, right? So Donkey Kong Country series, like in my opinion, is like the greatest platformer of all time. Super Mario World's also up there. Super Mario 64, like those are the kinds of games that I was like really into, other than Pokemon.
Let me ask this: do either of you ever, when you think of a time, like a certain year or a certain, just general like category of a few year time segment, do you ever think back of that and your mind goes directly to what games you were playing at the time? Am I the only one that's that big of a gamer that when I think about, say, we talked about the early 90s, but then I start thinking about what games was I playing in the early 90s. Some people relate to music. I always go back to what video games was I playing at the time. Do either of you do that at all?
Absolutely. There's a Deftones album that if it plays, I'm playing Armored Core 2 all over again. if I hear a track from that album, I'm playing Armored Core 2.
For me, it's not so much. Everything's more like a blur to me. Like a game's just smeared across my whole lifetime. So, and I keep coming back to them, right? Even like the older ones. So it helps.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, there are so many great games like throughout, and everybody's preferences are obviously different. And I want to know, how did you discover Storybook Brawl? With so many games out there, and even more now than there ever have been before, how did you come across Storybook Brawl?
This one's kind of funny. I have a friend who doesn't play card games, but he's really into like just clearing out the Steam discovery queue and just finding every single game that's like even possibly remotely interesting. So he comes across Storybook Brawl. He's like, he sends it to me. He's like, this looks like Hearthstone. You would like it. And I was like, all right. I download it, check it out, play a few games, thought it was fun, then kind of put it on the back burner for a while. And like I didn't pick it up really heavily until like a couple months later when some other of my friends found it through like day 9 or something like that, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this game. So
That's actually so much better than the answer I was hoping for. I didn't know what to expect from that. That's amazing. And I have to respond. I see Keith asking in chat. He wants to know how Yuck discovered Storybook Brawl. The reason Keith wants to know is because Keith is the one that suggested Storybook Brawl to me. So I hate to shout out Keith, but shout out to Keith. And thank you, Keith, for introducing me to such a great game. And I was going to ask, you said you played a few games and then put it on the back burner. How long would you say that you played before you really knew that you loved it?
That's a good question. I don't know, maybe like 10 or so games to really get a good feel for it, right? Like when I first started playing it, I really enjoyed the gameplay of it, but I was kind of off put by like the visuals a little bit. I was like not interested in like an early access game at that time, and I also wanted like to play like a first person shooter for some reason. But yeah, but you know, after I got into it and really understood it, I was really big into Battlegrounds, and so I was like, yeah, this is like really hits all those notes that Battlegrounds hitting, but like in a better way. So
that makes a lot of sense because Yuck and I, of course, both came from playing a ton of Battlegrounds, and I feel very similar to what you just mentioned there. Got into it, and then Yuck had already been playing some, and did a couple of Discord streams, and I felt a little bit lost, or I didn't quite, but something about it just sucks you right back in. You see some of the like the integer overflow days where when I got into it, right, and so a lot of echo wood numbers that would run off the page, but it just kind of, there was always that tickle of, how do you do these things?
Yeah, you really covered the way I feel as well. When you talked about the visuals, I don't know that I was a big fan of the visuals originally. They've certainly grown on me, and I love them now. But yeah, initially it was just different, I think, from any game that I was used to playing. And so it took me a moment to adjust to that. But the first game I played, gameplay-wise, I played one game, and I knew, okay, I love so many decisions and so many like mechanics and how things are approached in this game, such as experience and how damage is dealt and how triples turn into treasures, which lead to so many different opportunities. And I knew like pretty quickly, as a streamer, it can be tricky to switch games, right? And I was streaming Battlegrounds, in fact, at the time. And I knew day one, and I haven't ever gone back to Battlegrounds, and I'm so happy to be playing Storybook Brawl now.
So instead of blaming Raschy, as I see in the chat, maybe we should be blaming Keith.
I'll take any absolution of blame, no matter what. So.
I gotta. I mean, this ties into such an interesting and one of the most interesting stories in Storybook Brawl. One of the sub stories, because we got into it. We loved the game. We loved to stream it, Yuck and I. And then all of a sudden, I keep hearing this name Raschy. I keep hearing about this tracker. We certainly used all kinds of trackers back then, and I certainly wanted to start using some kind of tracker. And I was like, this looks really cool. How do you catch the bug? What makes you start wanting to build a tracker?
Oh, well, I think one of my friends, Freddie Bob in chat, was like, mentioning about looking at the log files, trying to, see if they could do anything with them. And I was going through a period at my job where I was like a bit unsatisfied with my work. I wanted something to challenge me. And so I was like, I could do something with this, at least play around with it, right? I roped some people into helping me out and started from there.
Were you ever inspired? Because No, you said you worked at the DoD for years, software engineering. So I gotta guess you got a very analytical mind. And I'm gonna go back to my own experience, just troubleshooting bugs. There's something about that, like that little something where you catch a little thing and you want to understand it and you want to dive in. Yeah, is that some kind of theme that pops up for you in life?
Yeah, I would say so. Always interested in tinkering and figuring things out. Like I used to take apart like electronics as a kid, right, and play around with them. So I'm always interested in how things work and getting to the meat and bones of stuff. So yeah, figuring out how Storybook Brawl worked under the hood and understanding the log file and whatnot is a fun process.
So just one day you go, I wonder what these log files got and how I can read this. It's like, all right, I gotta do this. The job's kind of not fulfilling everything at the moment.
Yeah.
It's wild.
So how long does it take to make a tracker? Obviously, I have no idea. That's not anything I have background in. What type of time sink are we talking about here?
Oh, geez. Well, I think things were a little complicated for me because I ended up picking up the tracker in a completely different language, programming language that I wasn't used to, because I needed to trick my friends into being able to help me. So
Nice.
I not only had to, refamiliarize myself with the language, but also learn on top of that, all the different, how to build the GUIs and stuff like that. So it took probably the greater part of a month, right? And that's with me, getting help on the parsing part of all the logs, and then basically building out all the UI stuff myself, right? So a lot of time after work spent just tirelessly hammering away.
Well, there's got to be a lot of composite parts too, right? Because you're reading log files. It's one thing just going, okay, I started the game as Wonder Waddle, I finished the game as Wonder Waddle, I got a 5th place, I got 40 points for that. But then you built in a combat simulator, you built in graphs and stats and tracking real time. So it sounds like going into that. How did you even figure out what all you wanted to include in there?
Geez. It started off just as displaying the boards, right? Didn't have an overlay or anything, and it would just display what cards you saw, and it didn't even have the the stats of the minions. The first iteration, it was just the card, with the full text and everything like that, because that's all I had available at me at the time, right? I was I just put them so I could remember what the units they had, and that was it, right? And I would flip through the tabs, and that idea I sort of took inspired from Firestone, which is one of the trackers for Hearthstone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point I was it'd be more useful if I could look at my stats and see how I've been performing on these heroes, so I can improve my play, right? And so I integrated all that in. I just kept adding more and more tabs to the thing, and then the overlay, I'm people are really gonna want this, it's gonna be cool, might as well add it, right? And then I think the simulator wasn't even my spearheading on that. I had a friend who really wanted to work on it, who doesn't even play Storybook Brawl. He just likes complicated event systems. So he's like, let me work on the simulator. And I said, here's the repo, have fun. I'll integrate it when you're done. And he had help from people that actually played it, right? So yeah, that's how that transpired.
That's dedication. That's a lot of time and effort that you put into that. And how, after putting all that time in, did it feel? Because it seems that it was received very well in the community, and that people were very happy to have it at the time. That must have felt great for you.
Yeah, it was really satisfying being able to provide something that had value, right? Working at the DoD, doing mean research stuff that doesn't ever see the light of the day, it was kind of depressing. And then being able to put stuff in front of people's hands and have people play with it, give you feedback on it, was just really, really great.
So you talked about what you did prior to working for Good Luck Games. There came a point in time where you started actually working for Good Luck Games. But when did you first have the thought that maybe I would or could work for Good Luck Games? How did that come about? Did you think I would like to do that and then it happened, or did you see the opportunity that came about and then that's where it entered your mind? How did that transpire?
So I did see the post for the job openings that they put in the Discord at some point, right? I thought about it for a second, then I was like, the game industry is a weird place to be in. I've heard bad things about it, right? And I was like, maybe I'm not looking for that kind of job, right? I kind of put it off on the back burner. And then like one day, like I got a Discord message from Raptor saying, hey, if you guys at the tracker and ever want a job, you guys should reach out because we really love the work that you guys did. So I was like, all right, let that one stew for like 2 months or something like that, and then finally sent out an application.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So what is your primary role right now? You don't have to give us all the things. I know you probably do a lot, but just, on an average day, what's kind of the things that you're doing most?
Yeah, so right now, I've actually transitioned to working on the art tool, right? And so I'm working on tools that basically are going to help our artists be able to, efficiently, get art for cards and things like that, be able to visualize them, like how would they look in the game, that kind of stuff. And then, organizing other internal stuff so that I can help the team, make the best product as, efficiently as possible. So, and then I do a little side work like on the actual rules engine on the server and stuff like that. So whatever they need me to do, I'll gladly go.
I have to ask this. Have you had the opportunity to read any of the bug reports? Do you ever see those at all?
Yeah, I can see them. Some of them get filtered out before they see me, but I have seen quite a bit of the bug reports.
Okay, so I have some follow-up questions and comments here.
Okay.
So first of all, how important are those in your opinion, the bug reports?
I think they're key. Realistically, the QA team, which is great that we have, can't possibly, get the amount of hours that, the average player, like multiplied by, however many players there are, can get to find these kind of bugs, right? So, reporting the bugs is very important so that we can, find where they are and reproduce them and fix them for you guys. So.
Okay, with that being said, how common is it for people to submit bugs that are actually intended interactions? Because there are some interactions that I will openly admit, as much as I've played this game, there are still some interactions that catch me off guard where I can often work my way backwards into figuring out what happened and why it happened. But sometimes in the moment, I'm thinking, wait, that didn't seem right. But how often would you say that people are reporting bugs that aren't actually bugs at all?
It happens a decent amount. There's an entire pile of like bug reports that are just like not a bug or like won't fix kind of things, right? So it's definitely less than the regular like normal bug reports or like people just suggesting stuff. But yeah, it for sure happens.
Okay, this is one I've been anxious to ask you about. Have you seen any that made you laugh?
Yes, there's been a couple that have made me outright laugh. Somebody called me out by name once in a bug report. It was like Raschy. I was like, oh no. And there's other funny ones where it's like people like there was like a guy who was like repeatedly asking for the same thing like every time he had a turn, right? Like just requesting a feature. So for an entire game, every turn after he was done, he'd request this feature like repeatedly, and I was like, why? Like.
Well, I'd be lying if I didn't say you just gave me an idea. The next time I submit a bug report, the name Raschy may be included somewhere within that report.
Raschy, may I have an Echo Wood? Raschy, may I have an Echo Wood? Raschy.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, one other thing I'd like to mention here. So our friend Horse Thief here, I think writes some of the most detailed F8 bug reports. He uses grammar, punctuation. He capitalizes at the beginning of a sentence. He adds details that are maybe in excess of what's actually needed. It's so fantastic that I've called him out and, in fact, given him a nickname. I sometimes call him Horse Thief 8. So instead of his name ending in F3, it ends in F8. So you can pronounce that how you want. Horse Thief, what do you have to say about that?
I just still really want to know, I reported it just the other day, when I kidnap or gloves of thieving a unit from a Radiant prison board, should that thing have all types on my side of the field? It does. I get that Echo Wood. It's everything. I slam that down on my good boy board. My good boy buffs it. You know what I mean? That is putting you right on the spot. But you don't actually have to answer that.
I mean, that is not intended. I think I actually fixed that bug. It should roll out in the next server patch. But,
okay.
Yeah, and I did see that F8, so very, very detailed, very helpful. But specific about maybe didn't need that much detail, but
wait,
I'd rather err on the side of caution, say more is better than less. So
setting the scene, the turn is 5.0. No, I just want you to brew a cup of tea. You don't have anything else to do, right?
exactly. So
Yeah, if it takes longer to read the report than it does to fix the problem, it might be a little too much, maybe.
Now's got to be the right time. I want to know. I want to know what you love about Storybook Brawl. What keeps bringing you back? What gets you excited to play round after round?
oh man, I just love, the fact that it's a new game every time, right? Like, being able to come in with a fresh mindset, don't have to worry about like constructing a deck or like, what my matchup's going to be against one opponent, right? It's like I get this fresh start. I get to have, all these awesome, like fun cards. And then I get the strategic depth of like, the positioning on the board is like, more interesting than Hearthstone Battlegrounds, in my opinion. The treasures add like that extra level of depth that, really, keeps me hunting for, oh, I want this treasure, that treasure. Most of the time I'm really trying to get Hat Ball going. That's like my favorite comp, which I'm sure is not a very uncommon thing in Storybook Brawl, but
People love casting spells.
It's fun. I mean, just dragging spells and rolling and not have to worry about anything else. It's pretty great. There's a reason why my top 3 most played heroes are Wonder Waddle, Peter Pants, and Horde Dragon. So
I'm starting to get a
Speaking
picture.
of Horde Dragon, Horse Thief, I know you're a big fan of Horde Dragon.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. What? So you talked about the treasures. Horde Dragon is the treasure hero, the one that if you get healthy and make it to the end, you get access to everything in ways that nobody else does. And the treasures are just, that's what drew me in initially and kept me coming back. Even when I started, the whole entire treasure aspect of the game, because coming out of the Battlegrounds background where your units combined into higher level units and then you built around the whole the treasure aspect just flipped everything so much on its head that I love hunting for those. I gotta wonder though too how your mindset changes now. Initially you started playing and you became an enthusiast. You really enjoyed the game, but now I wonder how much thoughts of balance run through your mind now that you've got the dual role as both, SBB player and SBB developer.
I think it's about the same.
Yeah.
Honestly, I thought like pretty heavily about balance like before I became a developer. So, yeah, it's always on the forefront of my mind. It's like, how could this be better? How could this be different? That kind of stuff. When I get upset at a game, it's like, what could have been done to change that? Was it my fault? Was it the game's fault? Yeah, so
I think that it's really cool. You were talking about you worked on the art engine and that you've got now all of these. So obviously, if you looked at the beta before the actual patch, the experimental beta, the team has a lot of ideas. They're chasing a lot of threads. They're coming up with a lot of ways to flip things on its head. And then things like the clock tower popped out, and then all of a sudden we've got this like thing that puts everybody on 6 on level 3 or level 4 a lot of the game, and all of a sudden you're playing. I know you had mentioned that things like the treasure map weren't always your favorite. Was that always the case?
I think when I first started out, I liked those kinds of treasures, right? But as I grew to understand the game more, I sort of kind of recognized them as like, potential pain points in the game. And for me, I think what it is that some of these treasures can create these situations very early in the game where it feels like you're up against an unbreakable wall, right? And, when it's like, turn 4.0 and the Horde Dragon has, Monkey's Paw and like Draxaver or whatever, right? And it's like, what do you do in that situation, right? Like, you just kind of feel hopeless. And so I think that there's excitement behind these treasures, which is good. And in my ideal world, I would like, either make them more difficult to obtain or like, just push them towards later ends of the game so it doesn't feel like I've been, locked out earlier.
So I feel like I have a bit of a different approach to the game than most players. And it's great that you can have different play styles in this game, but we're talking about treasures and a lot of people like hunting treasures. You know what one of my favorite things in the game is knowing when to not take a triple. Some of these small nuanced decisions is spending this amount of gold giving me enough chances at a treasure that I want? What are the level 3 treasures on this level that I could possibly get? How many of those actually would be ones that I would choose to take? What can I do with this gold if I don't take this triple? So there are so many thoughts that I can't even verbalize them as I'm playing and streaming that I'm going through. Sometimes just whether or not I buy this character that's shining in the shop that clearly wants to be bought. And I love that it just adds so many layers to the game.
It's kind of funny you talk about that. It's we've had often conversations around different personalities and what different people are looking for from a play experience, and from now on the developer side of the house, you're constantly looking, I'm guessing, to I always I beat this thing to death, but the Timmy, Johnny, and Spike conversation of the people who are all about quality over quantity versus the people who are about quantity over quality, the people who are there to just get max EV and have the most wins. So it can't be easy, and some of the experiences you described are the reason I love Horde Dragon so much. Getting that blind mouse monkey paw, it feels good, and then I get to build and play whatever game plan I want. But on the other side, so it's just everything is such a delicate balance. Has your mindset, how if any, has your mindset changed around these things over time now?
It's a good question. I don't know if they've changed a whole lot. I think that I understand the opposing forces that are at stake here, right? You have the newer player experience / the casual experience that's I just want to have the most fun time, right? And then I also understand the professional player, the experienced player who's I want to maximize my winning potential and I want to have the greatest chance of winning kind of stuff. And at times those things are at ends with each other, right? And it's difficult to try to tease them apart, right? And so I think that'll be the ultimate thing for this game to conquer, right? Is making an experience that's good for all players, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that. That reminds me, I think something that everybody will have a strong opinion on is Trophy Hunter when Grim Soul was still in the game. It just leads me to this thought, what you just said. I didn't like it, but some people loved it, right? It was very polarizing. But what's good for one person isn't good for everybody. And to figure out what's good for the game as a whole, I think is very, very difficult. It must be. And so when I have strong opinions, I obviously share them, but I try to understand exactly what you're saying. I try to keep in mind that just because I don't like this doesn't mean it's not actually the best thing for the game. So I sometimes have to remind myself of that, that everybody's not getting or looking for the same experience that I am.
Yeah, I often feel like balance is a weird word, even though we always have to talk about balance and we always have to, with the upcoming changes and things. I don't even know exactly how you define when something is balanced, and if everything stays perfectly balanced. I mean, we're not talking. Is it balanced when a linear game plan like Dwarves is the highest average win rate of your lobbies? Is it balanced when? So everything kind of needs to shift. I think I feel like, at least personally, I get stuck too much on the concept of this needs to change so that we can achieve balance, when in reality I think it's kind of again, circling back to the engine work that you're doing, and the very experimental beta. I like that we're changing with some things that shake up that balance a little bit. And so Clock Tower came out, and I had a fun few rounds with it, and I had a frustrating few rounds against it. But I liked that the idea existed and happened, and that we had a chance to see what that was like. I'm really enjoying the thought process of the team.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of cool experimental cards coming out, and throwing stuff against the wall, see what sticks. I think the players really like seeing all these cool and exciting cards, and as long as the bad ones get fixed with expeditious speed, then it's all good, I think.
It's always interesting to me too to see anytime a patch comes out, no matter how big or small, because even a small patch can have some big influences over the game. I'll give an example. There were several changes in this most recent patch, but one of those was Oni Tyrant went from level 5 back to level 6 where it was previously. Just that alone, I found, has influenced some of the things I do in a lobby. And that's only just that one change. And I mean, on a consistent basis, game in and game out, it's affecting how often I'm buying some characters on level 4, and some of my overall strategies as far as can I use Oni Tyrant as a comeback mechanic if I don't have a strong enough start. So I can't imagine. And when you also factor in player behavior changes anytime there's a patch, and then players change the way they're approaching the game, which causes other players to also adapt and adjust. And so it's so hard to predict how things are going to go. I just can't even wrap my head around how you figure out what gets changed and what goes in a game. I think it has to be at least partially, like you said, let's try some things and see how it goes and adjust from there. And I'm so glad that Storybook Brawl and the dev team is willing to try things. And if it doesn't work, like Clock Tower, okay, we're going to remove it, at least for now, and move on without it and see where that takes it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'd imagine all three of us here, and I did a little bit of a mind read, but I'd imagine since we really enjoy playing the game, we want to see these changes and we want to see this thing, stay fresh and have that patch cycle where the game just is constantly updating to draw more people in. We want to play with more people. I certainly always wanted to have more people to play with, and from all the different ranges too. The people who are going for the high rolls like me, and that's kind of their main focus, to the Max EV Pro Club players that are going and performing in tournaments and being very consistent. Which makes me think of something really cool that's coming up. I don't know what all you got to share on this one so far, but I am excited about this mobile beta client now that we've got coming up. That's going to be really cool. Do you know, and I haven't looked into this, and this is probably on me. Do you know if I'll be able to seamlessly close the game and then connect to the mobile client, and it'll just pick up, reconnect, and I'll just keep playing from where I left off? It's just a fleeting question in my mind.
It should work. And I haven't tried it yet. I do have the mobile app on my phone.
Oh, jealous, baby. Jealous.
But yeah, I think that should work, right? So.
Oh, mobile tracker. What? I think developing apps like that would be that's a completely. You said you learned a whole new language to create a tracker. That's got to be another language, I would imagine.
I don't think that's ever going to happen. There are architectural reasons why trackers just don't work on phones. Hearthstone had one for Android that had to be shut down because of how Google changed access to like files and things like that. So unfortunately, you probably won't see that happen ever, if we're going to be honest. So
I'm sure everybody's excited. People have been asking and talking about the mobile release now that we're getting closer. I know I'm super pumped. I think a lot of people are. Another thing that's pretty hot topic in Storybook Brawl is SBB 99. Just what's your overall thoughts on SBB 99, Raschy?
So yeah, I think that SBB 99 is very exciting, right? I'm glad that there's some new, fresh content that people get to enjoy in the game, and that it's just shaking up and getting people excited about it. So personally, I prefer the regular game mode to SBB 99. But I'm glad that we have options available for people who want to do other stuff. So
I gotta ask. I gotta get a little personal here. What's your best finish in SBB 99?
I think it's like a second. I don't think I ever.
Oh, a second. What do you remember what you played?
I think it was some sort of mage comp. Generally, that's where I end up going in all these SBB 99 matches. It's just like I'm trying to make ball fork happen as quickly as possible. So
I tend to be very humble. But the way you said, I think just a second, we're talking about SBB 99. Come on, Raschy. I mean, I know it's not the crown that you were going for, but second with that many players in the lobby, I feel like that's pretty good.
I mean, mathematically, yes, it's good, right? But there's something like psychological for me about SBB 99 that makes me like turned off by it. Sometimes, like when I take like a 61st, like I know that, it's equivalent to like a 6, right? But it doesn't feel like a 6. It feels a lot worse than that, right? Yeah. And coming in the top 8 doesn't feel as good as coming in the top 8 for some reason. I don't know. It's human psychology is strange.
I was laughing the other day when I had like a 35th or the 50th or something on Mask, and I commented you were in a chat, and I was like, now my average for Mask this patch is showing at 11.12, and you're like, yeah, there's somebody. I don't think it was you, but somebody was like, yeah, there's a button for that. You can ignore those.
Yeah. I actually added the ability to filter those out in the tracker if you guys haven't updated that.
So I'm going to take us on a little bit of a tangent here. I didn't know this was cause to celebrate today, but I've just learned that it's apparently the happy 1-year early access anniversary for Storybook Brawl. And anybody that's familiar with me knows that's going to come with a bit of a golf clap. Fantastic. I'm glad that we could be here on stream to help celebrate that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Storybook Brawl is the best kind of early access game. You had touched on it earlier. I often will avoid early access games, but more of the sort like call it a survival or maybe a roguelike or something like that, where I feel like I buy in and I have my experience, but it's a game that I'm going to play through kind of once, and I'm going to play through it in an incomplete state. So I tend to avoid, but this is not that game. This is the perfect kind of game to go early access and iterate and iterate and iterate, because every meta is interesting and fresh and unique and fun all on its own.
Yeah, it's interesting that you point out that it's still in early access because my son is a friend of mine on Steam, and just a couple of days ago saw how many hours I have played in Storybook Brawl and felt the need to call me out. So, you know, to then think it's still in early access is pretty mind blowing. How much I've played and enjoyed this game already.
1 whole year.
It's a long time, yeah.
Okay, Raschy, I put this out to the world the other day. I'm going to put you on the spot. You don't have to do this if you don't want, but do you have any questions for Horse Thief and or myself?
Oh man, I don't think I have any questions for you guys. You know,
Okay, not necessary.
That's enough to know everything that goes on. So
No, that's fine. You do get to interact with us on a regular basis. For anybody that doesn't know, Horse Thief and I both stream Storybook Brawl consistently. So you know us a lot better than we know you. I'm so glad that we could spend some time with you today, getting to know you.
yeah, it's been fun.
I gotta ask one last question. Something's been tickling my mind. You didn't tell me anything about this when we talked before. You have a cat?
I do have a cat, indeed. His name is Klaus. He's a tuxedo cat. I think he's being sequestered in a bedroom somewhere with my fiance, so he doesn't bother me because it's a tendency to do that when I'm on camera. So,
Well, Yuck,
Okay.
you happen to have anything else to add?
No, I think we've covered a lot, and we've actually gotten some fantastic answers and insight. Again, I really appreciate you joining us today, and everybody in chat that came and enjoyed apparently what is the 1 year early access anniversary for Storybook Brawl, and we got to spend it together.
very cool. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Raschy. Thank you, Yuck, for joining us. Thanks, everybody in chat, like Yuck said, for hanging out and pinging us as we went. And just want to remind everybody to please hop into the Cover to Cover Discord if you want to stay updated. We have our next community tournament brewing. That's coming up, so let that percolate in the back of your head. And for now, this has been Cover to Cover. I'll catch you guys later.